Welcome. You're listening to the Digital Soulspace podcast, musings of the metaphysical, magical, and nonsensical. We invite you to open your mind, let your imagination run wild, and to indulge in that which often cannot be explained. Get ready to entertain all your six senses with the official podcast of digitalsoulspace.org, an independent online metaphysical community.
And welcome everybody to the Digital Soulspace podcast, musings of the metaphysical, magical, and nonsensical. I hope I said that right. My name is Michael Robert. I am your host and co-host of this amazing space, digitalsoulspace.org. Please give us a visit as we are observing all things metaphysical, paranormal, spiritual, and we're about to celebrate our third birthday. So yes, very excited. We have a live audience with us today. We are going to be talking today about real life ghost stories. So there we go, thunderclap. Yes, it is Halloween coming up very shortly, in just a few days, less than a week away. And we are getting ready to celebrate and observe what many believe is the one night of the year where the veil becomes so thin that spirits on the other side have the most easiest time reaching us and getting a hold of us. In fact, many cultures, like in Latin America, celebrate Los Dios de los Muertos. And in my best Spanish accent I could do, which is the night when your ancestors return and you honor them with pictures and food and skull candy, all sorts of wonderful, cool things. Kimber says, happy birthday, DSS. Yes, we're so excited about that. Almost 3 years. Okay, so this podcast is all about real ghost stories. So in just a moment, we're going to be opening it up and allowing our live audience to participate and share their real life ghost stories. They'll be coming on camera. You'll be hearing them and seeing them. And we're super excited and very grateful to them for participating in our broadcast today. So with no further ado, let's get started. Who would like to go? There's Kimber.
Hey,
how are you? Welcome.
Thank you. So glad to be here, and I'm so excited about this.
Yes, I know. Isn't this cool? So a lot of us, because we're so into the metaphysical, we tend to attract some pretty scary ghost stories or interesting events that are actually true. And later on, I'm definitely going to share mine that really was frightening, actually. So you want to get started and let us know what your ghost story is? Or?
Well, I've got 2 or 3. They're kind of little spotty events throughout my life that I've had experiences with. So do we want to just do one at a time, or
yeah, that's fine. However you want to do it.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to group them because, like I said, they're just little bits and pieces. I grew up in a haunted house, and I can remember laying there one night reading a book. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning or something, and all of a sudden I heard something at my ceiling. We lived in an old house, and I heard something in my ceiling laughing, and it wasn't a menacing laugh. It wasn't scary, and it didn't scare me. If I heard it today, it'd probably freak me out, even as many experiences as I've had. But I just looked up and I was like, why don't you be quiet up there? And I wish I had never told him that. I literally have since then, my uncle lived there after we did, and his granddaughter would come visit.
Okay.
And during that time, she would communicate with it.
Oh, neat. Okay.
And found out his name.
Oh, what was it?
And I have Ephraim.
Ephraim?
Yeah.
Oh,
Ephraim is the best way I know to spell it.
Oh, wow. How cool is that?
Yeah. And I actually have since found him, I think.
Oh,
I've
no
actually
way.
seen a photo of him, and it was amazing. I've actually talked to one of his descendants even.
That's a cool thing.
Yeah, it was really cool.
You know what? You bring up an interesting point, though, and maybe some of our people who are even listening after we tape this might actually help them, because sometimes people get a lot of interactions with spirit or what they perceive to be spirit, because sometimes it may not even be like a spirit. It could be like a thinning of space-time, and you're actually looking at like something that's replaying in history over and over again, like a film strip. But you bring up a good point, is that a lot of times with some paranormal activity, if it's not welcome, tell it to stop. And we have this thing, the term I used years ago was claiming your dominion. And just saying, because we are human beings living in a physical world, and the others, they're kind of out of their element, spirits and hauntings and stuff, they're out of their element. And so because they're energy based, they literally have to pay attention to our energy, and our energy means a lot. So you can literally claim your dominion and say, hey, go. I mean, get out of here. I know I've done that in my living room in the middle of the night. I used to have a gentleman that would every single night stare at me while I was sleeping. And I couldn't see him visually, but I could feel him like you would not believe. And he would just stand there in the living room. I literally would have sometimes get up in the middle of the night and say, you have to go. I cannot sleep. And he would go. He would come back every now and then until I finally found out who he was. And then we did this whole helping him crossing over thing, which is a whole nother podcast. But that's so interesting that you did that, and you sort of regret it now, right? You're like, oh, I wish I did.
I wish I had embraced it more. I didn't really understand a lot of things throughout my childhood, but then, having several experiences since then, I actually went back the night that my uncle passed. I went back to the house, and I literally went into the bathroom and just told him, I was like, I'm sorry, I told you to be quiet. And I did.
You apologized.
Yes. I told him I wish I had listened.
Wow. So tell us more. What other kinds of experiences have you had?
So I don't know. A lot of people may have heard of the Dover lights.
Why does this sound so familiar?
It's a lot of people see them in different places.
Okay. Rebecca says she's heard of them.
Yeah, because she's not far from me. She's kind of in the area that I grew up in.
Okay.
So we've all heard of the Dover lights here in Arkansas, pretty much. There's some other lights that are in different places, but this particular one, we used to go up there and just, we'd go ghost hunting and stuff like that. But this one particular place, we went up, and it's in, deeply wooded areas. There's not hardly anything up there, and we went to this overlook, and there was a whole truckload of us, and I think a couple other cars. We were teenagers. And the story is that the Spaniards were in there and had gold with them and lost their gold or something. I don't remember exactly what the story was. But people would always report seeing these lights, and nobody could ever find them. There were people that would go on four-wheelers and, all this stuff, going and searching to see what the source of these lights were, and nobody could ever find the source of these lights.
And were they orbs? Were they like orbs, or were they bright lights?
They weren't so big that you could actually say that they were orbs, because we didn't see them that close to us.
Okay.
They were like on the other side. So like you would look down across this little valley or gorge, and up on the other side, a lot of times you'd see them. Well, this one particular night, one of the kids was being a little smart aleck and decided to yell, "We've got your gold."
Oh no. So like a trigger. Like a trigger.
Yeah. And apparently they heard, because the lights got really active and started coming up our side of the gorge.
Oh, wow.
And coming up after us. And, it looked like they were coming up after us. Everybody jumped in their vehicles and just tore out of there. Dirt road, dirt flying everywhere. And everybody is just freaking out.
Oh, wow.
Because we didn't know how far they were going to chase us.
Right. And so were they colored lights, or?
I don't remember it being colored lights. I do remember seeing shapes in the dust.
Oh, that's freaky. It really sort of reminds me of that movie, The Fog. It reminds me of I used to love that movie.
Freaky. I told the guy as soon as he yelled it, I was like, "You are stupid. You are just stupid. That was not smart." I knew it
That's
wasn't.
amazing. It's interesting because a lot of ghost hunters, when they do investigations or paranormal investigations, and Mariah's on here, and I know that she's done some, and I've seen them at least on television where they try to piss off a spirit in order to get them to interact. I don't know if that's considered appropriate to do in ghost hunting, or I'm that type of person that when I go to a ghost hunting sort of thing, and I've been to one, I'm like, can we just help them cross over? So it's kind of interesting. And then what I did find out at the ghost hunt was a lot of the people that were ghost hunting in my situation, they weren't into the metaphysical. They were just into the rush, the adrenaline rush of encountering something unknown. And so when I was there and I felt dizzy in a certain location, I told them, and they're like, oh, everybody's feeling dizzy right here. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That makes me feel good in a way, because, but then when I said, well, I'm a psychic medium, they were, all of a sudden they all got gathered around me and they were like, really? So I was surprised that they weren't psychics or mediums and stuff like that. So that's interesting that you were able to use like that sort of, trigger for them to get them to respond.
I didn't do it. No. I was telling him that was the wrong thing to do. I knew that before I had even got into metaphysics and paranormal and all that stuff. Well, I mean, I was a little into the paranormal then, but I didn't know anything about it, about what to do and what not to do.
Right. I love what Mariah just said. She goes, oh, I hate when people intentionally make them mad. A lot of investigators do, or bring trigger objects, but I hate it. Be nice to people. Be nice to spirits. I agree. Yeah. There's usually no reason to be afraid of spirits. And I think when you are, you can even unintentionally feed some beings or entities with your fear, because that's their food source. That's their energy source, believe it or not. Yeah. Rebecca says exactly. And I'll go a step further and I'll say that that's very common with shadow people. That we'll talk about shadow people in a little bit, because I think, I would love to scare some people tonight with this podcast. So we will definitely talk about shadow people in a little bit. I've had so many experiences with shadow people. And so it's been very interesting. Okay, do you have anything more?
I got one more. So
one more.
Once I did step into the metaphysical, we had started working with my soul group came together. We started working with our kids, teaching them how to stand in their power and not be afraid of these things that they were experiencing. And so at one point, one of the soul sisters needed a cleansing on her house. And so we thought, okay, well, we'll give it a shot and see what we can do. We grabbed the sage and went in, and with it, the proper intentions and everything. And we smoked that place up like Cheech and Chong. I mean, it was loaded with sage. We were like not playing around, we were setting our intentions and everything. Except I had not yet learned about them following you home. Oh. Now this entity's and it was a ghost. But this ghost's signature was to poke you in the leg. Oh wow. It was like just pressing a finger into your leg, poking you. So I get home that night and I lay down to go to bed, and all of a sudden I feel the signature poke in my leg. And so I sat up in my bed laughing, and I was going, you know what? Years ago, that would have scared the living daylights out of me. Yeah. I said, but not anymore. Exactly. Thanks to teaching our kids to stand in their power, I actually learned how to stand in mine. Yeah, right. And that's such a valuable lesson. Yeah. And I sent it on its way, and I said, you're not welcome here. Go. And it left. Yeah. Rebecca says, way to go, Kimber. A lot of us, especially if you get woken up in the middle of the night, I can't tell you how many times I say, go away. I am sleeping. And I've had several people tell me that my home is like this transit point. They kind of say it's my fault, though, because they say I open up a lot of things, not in a negative way, but they say I experience a lot because I open stuff up. And
And I'm not scared of it. It doesn't bother me. It kind of like interesting to me. But sometimes they do bother me at night when I'm sleeping. The poking thing is interesting because I used to work in a building that was extremely haunted. And one of the experiences I had was in the computer room where I bent over and somebody poked me in the butt. You know, like, and I went, ooh! And I right away said the name of my coworker because I thought it was her because she used to do that to me all the time, right? Like to tease me, she would go, boop. And I went, oh my God, stop that. And there was nobody there. So then I went straight ahead. I was like, oh, I know I know what this is. So I went right after I was changing backup tapes, actually. After loading up the tape drive, I went back and I found her and I go, okay, so I just got poked in the butt and it wasn't you in the computer room. And she says, was it in front of the backup tape drive? And I go, yes. And she goes, someone had physically grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her out of the way while she was there. So, stuff like that can happen. And it can be innocent. And it can be just people, hanging around. But you definitely, we have the capacity to tell people that they're not welcome. And so, yeah, absolutely.
It's about setting boundaries. When you're dealing with stuff like this, you still have to set boundaries. And there's occasional times that they'll break through that. But usually if you're setting your boundaries, then you're good.
Yeah, boundaries are just as important with spirit as they are with people. Kimber, thank you so much. Oh, wait, I pushed it again. I wanted it to go through the whole thing. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, Kimber.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, no, this is so much fun. So, very cool. So we're going to welcome somebody up. So I have to figure out here how to, okay, there we go.
Said she was going next.
Yeah. Oh, Rebecca's going next. Okay. So see you later, Kimber. Thanks again. And
Bye.
now we're going to speak to Rebecca. So and there's Rebecca. Hello.
Hi, can you guys
hear me? Rebecca. I have to do the applause because last time we did the podcast, I didn't do the applause, and I do them on my other podcast, The Geek with Muscles. And so when I did the Digital Soulspace podcast, I need the applause. They're just so important to me. So how you doing, Rebecca? Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. That's a hard follow-up, Kimber.
Oh, yeah. This is so much fun. I'm really glad we're doing this.
Yes, and those Dover lots, that y'all should look it up. Lots of investigators have been here for those, and including, some of the big ones like Ghost Adventures and all those ones on TV. So I cannot believe they taunted those lights. That's
right. That's interesting. I know. I was like, oh, okay. I've got your gold. Okay. Like I said, totally reminded me of that movie, The Fog, where they were coming back for their gold. So, Rebecca, you have some ghost stories.
I have some very good ones.
Okay.
Like Kimber mentioned, we are both from Arkansas, and that is just... Anybody that's never been here doesn't understand the rich history we have here.
Okay.
Natives, colonials. I mean, it's real deep South history.
Okay.
So one of my first experiences, I was around 5. Well, I saw a lot of stuff when you're young, as most people on here do. They see little things when they're growing up, hear your names, hear whistles, smell things, those kind of things. But my first was probably around 5 years old, and I had a godmother that lived in one of the old big houses in central Little Rock, just the historical mansions. It was beautiful. And I walked in for the first time, and I heard in my head, as soon as I walked through the door, oh, here we go.
Oh,
now,
okay.
Till this day, I don't know if that was me or if someone was saying something to me. I was only 5, so,
Right.
How do you respond?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I just went up the big, huge wooden stairs inside, and they just felt so big, but there was something not right about this house to me, even at that young age.
Wow. And so
And
would you consider yourself to be clairaudient? So for people that don't know what that means clear hearing. So some psychics and mediums, we have some clairs that are stronger than others. Would you consider yourself to be clairaudient?
yeah, I think that I am. I'm currently still in an apprenticeship for mediumship. I was just so repressed in my life with all of that I'm not clear on things right now.
Okay.
But I am actively trying to figure it all out. But I do, like, I can, like Michael, the first time I talked to you, I could hear you and friends talking. I don't really know what y'all were talking about, but I heard your voice before you even spoke.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And
That's
like
really cool.
I knew what my kids were going to sound like, because I could hear what they were saying in a young age, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, I
That is so
don't,
neat.
yeah, I don't know. I can't like control it or really know or do anything with it. But I'm still learning.
I had a
That's a good
similar
point.
experience when I was with Abraham Hicks, is that I
Oh,
was
yeah.
hearing multiple voices, but I didn't understand. I literally said that in the video they sent me, or the audio, is that I didn't understand what they were saying. But as she's talking, it's like I can hear other conversations, and she represents a collective of beings, not just a singular one. She's always
Wow.
saying we.
Wow.
So it's really cool that you had a similar experience. But with me, that's kind of spooky, because I'm like, what am I what am I, you know what? Maybe what I just heard is that maybe perhaps you were picking up on my circle of guides conversing as.
Well, and we were talking first during right before Hurricane Helene hit, or Milton. So you were still, I think that's probably what I was picking up, that kind of stuff, those talk and banters. And you had just had a real paranormal experience with the birds and all that. Yes. So I think I was just kind of picking up that.
And you were, just to let everybody know, I apologize for every time. So this is interesting. Every time I podcast or my dogs go, they love the energy. And they go nuts.
Well, I'm honored that they bark during my talk.
They start playing, and every time I podcast or I do that kind of thing, which I go live, it's fascinating. So Rebecca, if people don't know, Rebecca was so kind during Hurricane Helene. She led a group meditation to reduce the strength of Helene and to also help North and South Carolina heal. The Carolinas heal from the hurricane right before, which all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank. But so thank you, Rebecca, for that. And so what other kinds of experiences have you had with?
Well, to that same location, just like maybe a few months later, I started seeing people in the house. So I was using the upstairs bathroom, and a little girl with blonde hair, and she was in a blue dress, sat up in the bathtub and stared at me while I was using the restroom.
That's so scary.
Okay, so I'm like 5 or 6. I cannot, and I screamed. Wow. Yes. Oh, so wow. I have a twin sister, and my godmother had a daughter the same age. We were all born at the same time. Around the same time. So they came in, and I always tell people when they're talking to me about their children or paranormal experience, watch your children, because from that point forward, we all did things together. We would not leave each other's side. Like, we would take showers together. We would go to the restrooms together. We were bonded. All three of us would not go anywhere in that house without each other.
Is and I always scared of.
Yes.
Oh, okay. You were terrified.
Children pick that stuff up.
So yes, in fact, When
Yes.
when I talk about my experience, well, my most frightening experience, it was when I was a child. Absolutely.
Yes. And so, I always say y'all should have been watching us, because
Right?
yeah. So years later, and there was stuff that happened in the house continuing after that. You just know. Well, they
Right.
brought in a very famous psychic who said that house was built by a Jewish family that had escaped the Holocaust, and it was a businessman who came and built the house, and it was all him. He was attached to that house, and that makes perfect sense if you think about it.
People are
You
attached to
flee,
houses.
and yes, you're a refugee fleeing, and you come to Arkansas, and I'm sure in that time period, it was hard.
Yeah.
But they made it, and they made it really well. They were one of those big mansions. So I imagine that he was just always going to be there.
He was hanging out. Yeah.
Yes. Now there
Mariah
was
says-
lots of other stuff that happened there, but that just started it all.
Wow. Now, Mariah says that children are usually more open to it than adults. And that's children, pets. I mean, I've seen my dog see something. I used to get, there was a empty plot of land next to my condo. And since there was no home there, it was get very dark at night. And it's exactly where I was walking one night and somebody tapped me on the back of the head, and I flipped around because this is Miami, this is the city, and sometimes there's kind of sometimes people walking around, they're looking like zombies, right? So somebody tapped me on the back of the head, and I just flipped around because I thought it was someone looking to like mess with me, and there was nobody there. And that's the exact same spot that when I had my Boston Terrier, she just froze one night on the sidewalk and started walking backwards. And she's staring straight in front of her. So she saw something. I didn't see it, but I felt it. Yeah. So then when I realized, okay, this is a person who's tied to this land, I literally said to him, I try to do the whole crossing over thing. And you know what? He didn't want to go because he's still there. I still feel him, but he's so friendly to me now. And here's the deal is that a lot of people don't realize that you have so much freedom when you cross over. You're not sucked into another place. You go willingly. And some people choose not to cross over either because of what they were taught growing up, or maybe they weren't exactly the nicest person and they're literally have this religious bond where they think, oh no, I'm going to hell, and so they turn away from crossing over because they're afraid of what's on the other side. And so it takes them some time to understand, no, it's safe, you can cross over, there's nothing horrible waiting for you there. And so I think some people just don't, and some people, they like where they are, right? They like being in your house, they feel good there, maybe they like your energy. They feel comfy. Maybe you're the family they never had.
Well, and some have a contractual obligation to stay there for a given period of time. They could, they need to stay there till they see this or go through this, or even in the afterlife, there's still things to learn, and it's a whole nother life. It's a whole nother thing. So sometimes you're not going to always move them along, but at least you're there to help, and at least you're there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, do you have anything more?
Well, of course, but they're not anything different than anybody else. I'd like to hear other people's stories, so I'll move right along. But thank you for inviting me and allowing me to share my story.
This was so awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. And this was cool. So we're going to get started. Again, thank you once again, Rebecca. And so we're going to... Who is our next volunteer? Who would like to go up? Yes, I agree. Kimber says these are great stories, and I agree. They are. They are really wonderful stories, and a lot of fun doing this. Rebecca says Nicola. Nicola is in the UK, and I think UK is paranormal central. At least that's how I felt since I was a little child. I think there's so much history there, and I think people from the United Kingdom are much more open to it. So, no, oh, Nicola, welcome.
Hello.
Wow, how is it in the UK?
It's not too bad today, actually. We've had a bit of a respite from the typical UK rain. So
Yes. Oh, it's been raining there a lot.
it's the United Kingdom. This is our.
Oh, it always rains. This is so awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And Nicola, just so everyone knows, if you've seen her on Digital Soulspace, Nicola has had an NDE. She's very connected. She's had a lot of different experiences. So, so what do you want to share with us today? I'm excited.
Firstly, I will show you the official DSS baby.
Oh, there's Ali. Oh, he gets Oh,
He's busy with his toys, so we'll leave him to that.
he is the official DSS baby. We all adore him.
Have a drink, little man. There you go, darling. So, I have two experiences to share with you. Maybe I shouldn't have shown him the camera because now he wants involved. Bear with me one moment. I'll pick him up.
Okay.
There we go. So, the first experience I have to share happened, 8-9 years ago.
Okay.
I was living with a friend at the time, and she was a hairdresser, and she was going round to one of her clients, who was also a friend, to do her hair, and she asked whether I would like to go round with her. I don't know why in particular, but why she asked me to go and see this particular lady, but we don't always know how spirits working, do we? So
No, we don't. Exactly.
So I went round, and there was many cats in the house, which is always a sign of spirits. I think cats, are definitely involved.
Oh, they're so connected. Yes.
Oh goodness, are they ever? So, but at this particular time in my life, I wasn't really open to my spiritual side. I was still repressing it. So these things weren't glaringly obvious to me, and I also hadn't experienced that much glaringly obvious things. So yeah, it was a nice evening. We were chatting. My friend was cutting her friend's hair. We had, I think we had a glass of wine even, but that only the one. That wasn't the reason I saw spirits. But during the night, I needed the toilet, and as you said, the UK is quite an old country. It's quite rich with history, and
Yes.
this particular house was one of those typical English houses with the higgledy-piggledy floor plan. So
Okay.
you would go from one room. It didn't have a specific floor plan, so you would walk through one room which was set up as a library, and then you would walk through another door and there would be a dining room, so it was and all the wooden beams, creaky staircases. You get the picture.
Oh, totally. I'm loving it too, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's lots of those houses around in the UK, and they're always nice little adventures.
Yes.
I've lived in one myself, and they're quite freaky in storms. But yeah, so at some point during the night, I needed the toilet, just for a number one, and the lady who owned the house, she said, "Oh yeah, so you just go up the stairs and turn to your left, and straight ahead is the toilet." So I left them downstairs chatting. I walked up the stairs, turned left, and sure enough, there was a door straight in front of me. But also, if I turned left again, there was a long corridor, which I didn't go down it, but it looked like there was doors off it, and then at the end of it, a staircase. And I had this awful feeling which made me turn to look down this corridor, and floating down this hallway was like a black cloud or a black orb.
Oh, wow.
And it was quite dense in the center, and then towards it was a circular, as I say, like an orb, so it sort of became less dense towards the edges, so concentrated in the middle and then thinned out towards the outer side edges, and it was just floating there, and it felt a little bit menacing, but it didn't approach me. And I didn't approach it. I just saw it and knew that what I was seeing, that there was something floating there. And I ran into the toilet and shut the door. Because, doors can stop these things, can't they?
Right. Yeah. At least, yeah. Well, at least our how do you say, our belief in that, that the door could stop. Maybe that helps sometimes. Because that we give off that energy, like, oh, there's a barrier, maybe,
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just throwing that out there, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I went to the toilet, and all the while I was sat there, I was thinking, how am I going to... Well, I wasn't thinking that, but I was thinking, how am I going to go back past this?
Yeah.
How am I going to open the door and finish the toilet, flushed, and was washing my hands, and I was trying to psych myself up to walk back. And I was in there for quite a while, and then I started to think, I'm actually going to have to go now, otherwise, that downstairs are going to wonder what's going on. Where am I? So I sort of psyched myself up, and I thought, right, just unlock the door, pull the handle, and then run in one movement. That's what we're going to do. So, and I did it and ran downstairs, and they were, just happily chatting, none the wiser to my predicament. And but I was really spooked, and I was quiet. I'm not a very quiet person, and so I was sort of sat there, and I was thinking to myself, should I say something? Will they think I'm crazy? This sort of thing. And they were chatting away, and I thought it grew inside me. I had to say something. So I said, Tina was the name of the lady who owned the house. I said, Tina, do you have a ghost here? And immediately her expression sort of softened. And she said, I do, yes. Why? And I said, because I felt like it was a very quick, experience, but I felt like it was a male presence. And so I actually said, he's upstairs, And she said, oh, it's my granddad. He built this house.
Oh, wow. And
he will just be checking you out to make sure you're okay. You must have a light, that's attractive.
Interesting. Wow.
And he's just checking you out. So she said out loud, Granddad, she's my friend. She's not a threat. It's fine. And she said, do you want to come back upstairs? I was like, well,
no.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, well, not really. But, she had, I don't know how she sort of knew to say this, but she said, I've got a doll's house, and I love doll's houses. I love them. And so she said, you can come and see it if you want. So when I went back upstairs, the presents had definitely gone. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That so reminds me of, there's this, I'm sure you're very familiar with Doctor Who, being in the UK. And I especially love the older Doctor Who's, not from the 80s, but the ones with David Tennant, and there's an episode where everyone thinks grandfather's coming to visit, and there's a company called Torchwood, and they turn on this generator. Well, it's not granddad at all. It was actually the Cybermen, these robots. But anyway, you reminded me, granddad, because there's this scene where they're all like, granddad's here, granddad's. And he turns
Ooh.
into a robot, and they're all like, ah, But anyway, that's fascinating. That the thing is that how you describe it showing up as a black orb, and I think some people may initially sense that to be like menacing, but I have read books where, in fact, the book where there was a near-death experience of a brain surgeon, and I want to say, I forget what the name of the book is, but anyway, he spends like 2 months in a coma, and during that time, he's on the other side. And when he sees what he identifies as source energy or as God, it was actually a big black like orb.
Wow.
And then he described why in fact that made sense. Even Kimber says, was that Eben Alexander? You know, it might have been.
It sounds familiar to me as well.
Yeah. Oh, and Justine is there laughing. Welcome, Justine. And Moriah says, even if the energy knows I'm safe now, I'm sure the brain goes, what the F was that? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah. And so the way you described seeing that orb, that's super interesting to me, because the fact that it was like a black orb, and I think that some of us, like I said, are predisposed to thinking that a black orb may be something that's negative, but in a witchcraft point of view, the reasons why a lot of witches burn black candles is because black candles attract light. Like literally the physics of anything black in color means it's not reflecting any light, it's absorbing all the light. And that's why it's absorbing the visible spectrum. And that's why you are seeing black in color. If you saw something that's red in color, it's because red is being reflected back. All the other colors are being absorbed. So that, from a science perspective, that's also interesting. So that's fascinating to me. What else do you have?
So, gosh, I lived with one of my friends. She's got agoraphobia. I lived with her for about 13 months.
Okay.
And she lived in this house. She's recently moved, but she lived in this house, gosh, getting on 30 odd years. And it was nothing, quite as eccentric as the first house I'm speaking about. It was, I spoke about it. This house is just a standard British council house. So 2 up, 2 down, we call them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I lived with her for a little bit while I was between houses and what have you. And I always knew that she had activity in the house, and she would, describe things happening and things going missing and blah, blah, blah. And it's not that I didn't believe it, but if you don't have experience of it yourself, it doesn't resonate so much, I don't think.
Right. Sometimes, yeah.
It's just a story,
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, I think when we spoke, you did a reading for me, and we spoke about messages. They're very powerful to us, but they don't mean anything to anybody else because they're not for them, are they? So
yeah, exactly.
I've had proof and an NDE, and I could tell you until the cows come home about how I believe or what I believe, but it doesn't mean anything to everybody. So,
right.
She would tell me this, and I would be like, And again, like I say, I was repressed for a while. So I lived with her for a little while, and my jewelry started going missing. And I know she's not the type of person to, do anything
right
like that, or, so it was in one place and then it wasn't there. And and you sort of think, did I just put it somewhere else? But I'm fastidious, and because of my childhood, I have, quite regimented regimes.
Right.
And so I know where things are and blah, blah, blah. And I suffered from OCD for a while. So, when you question yourself, I was thinking, no, I know I put my jewelry there and it's moved. So I just thought I'll just try asking for it back. And sure enough, within a couple of days, it was back. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So this, I started experiencing, the longer I lived there, I started experiencing these two spirits more. And in the end, became aware that there was an older lady and an older sort of, gosh, she must have been from about the 18th century, she felt like. And a young boy, roughly puberty age, between 10, 12. They weren't related, but she had taken on a sort of grandmotherly role to this little boy because they were in the same space. That's how it came across to me. And one night, when I was growing up, my dad used to read this newspaper, and, sometimes this newspaper would have stories of wacko women, of married a ghost, and
I've heard that. Yes.
This sort of thing, and he'd read these and like scoff at them and what have you. And the environment that I was in at the time, I sort of thought, I'll scoff too. But then again, when it happens to you, you think, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have been so judgmental.
Yes. When something like that happens,
yeah. So this particular night, I noticed the energy had been increasing. The feelings and sightings of these two apparitions was becoming more frequent and stronger. And I was lying in bed, getting ready for sleep, really. And the little boy shot across the room, not as a physical, not as a visual entity, but as a physical force.
Oh wow!
And kissed me.
Oh wow!
Yeah. It was a shock for me too, and I was actually quite angry because I hadn't permitted that.
Right,
to happen,
exactly.
So my initial response was that I pulled back and I said, "Don't do that again." And he did never do that again. I must say. Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's to have that physical interaction. That happened to my brother when he was sleeping.
Yeah.
The night my grandmother died, somebody kissed him on the cheek in the middle of the night. And then he woke up and we found out my grandmother had passed. So that's, it happens, people.
Yeah. Well, they can pull enough energy together to make matter in a sense, to interact with you. And for sure, and I feel like, I at the time was in my 30s, so I was in my prime, and he's at this 10, 12 cusp of puberty age.
Yes,
that energy sort of, propelled him, I guess, to
no, and I think that's
appropriately.
And I think that's also kind of a testament to the fact that when you cross over, you still hang on to a lot of attributes of what you were in the physical. So you hang on. There's still fear involved in some cases, even though when some people have NDEs, as you've had, they report, no fear. But as I mentioned before, we have a lot of freedom. And I think if some people are absolutely terrified of crossing over because of what awaits them, and in my opinion, nothing bad ever is there. But what awaits them, and that if they have such a fear of that before it even happens, I think that might definitely be, but that's amazing that you had that physical, like you actually felt that. I've been woken up in the middle of the night, somebody hitting my leg, like smack, like that. And I swear it was my Serbian grandmother, like just teasing me. Because she used to do that when I was a kid. I felt like smack. So definitely a thing. And wow,
you don't tell too many people, do you? Because you get the looks. Like I was one of those people. So
you get no until it happens to you. Right? Amazing. Well, Nicola, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And please give a huge hug to the official DSS baby Ali for us.
I will. Bye.
Oh, bye, Ali. Take care. Oh, my God. He's precious. Okay. Take care. Thank you.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was Nicola live from the UK and with our official DSS baby, Ali. That was so cool. Wow. Okay, so who is next? Mariah says, by the way, I love how people retain their personality. It makes so much fun. It makes it so fun and confirms humanity. Yeah, totally. I agree. It's like, people do. They have their personalities. And I really think our personalities continue to develop. Like, I think when we come back, we start off where we start where we left off, like our personalities, and I think a lot of that is inherent to we are as a non-physical being as much as it is to a physical, if I am making any sense. Do you realize, Nicola says, do you realize you have a rainbow in the right-hand corner of the screen? No, I do not, because I cannot see it. Does anyone else see the rainbow in the right-hand corner of the screen? I don't. Oh, that's interesting. I don't. Is this the rainbow here? I see a smudge there, but it's not a rainbow. Oh, wow. Yeah, here it's not a rainbow. It's just a smudge. Interesting. Wow. Weird things are happening with our podcast. Okay, so who would like to go next? It's a rainbow, Mike. Yes. How funny. Who would like to go next? There we go. Welcome, Maura. How are you?
I'm good. I have to say thank you to everyone for sharing these stories. These have been fantastic, and I've been happy to join.
Oh yeah, these are amazing. Thank you. And Mariah, you're a ghost hunter, right? You go ghost hunting?
I have, yes.
Oh, cool.
I have a couple stories in the belt. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I won't hold you back. So, what would you like to share?
Well, to start with, I've been fascinated with it kind of my whole life. There's some spiritual inclinations on both sides of my family, so they've kind of been interested in it, but all from small town Midwest. So like we're into it, but like we can't admit that we're into it, but stuff has happened, but like I don't know about it. Okay. So I think that I was set up for success for a while, and I'll talk about stuff. I used to watch ghost hunters. I watched like some ghost YouTube people, and then I'll bring it up, and my mom was like, well, you know that I watched this person and that person. I'm like, what? So I guess the very first one was I was probably like 11 or 12 is when I was brought into it. We were cleaning up. My mom was from an old farmhouse in South Dakota, and we were cleaning out some of her closet stuff, and she pulled out the old Ouija board. And obviously there's some discourse around whether or not a Ouija board is an acceptable thing to use. Yeah. And what I typically say is like, people also feel that way about the pentagram and cards and any of this. So like there's, a negative perception, and why is that? But also, and I've told my mom this, like, just because you have a front door doesn't mean an axe murderer is walking in your house every day. Like Kimber was saying earlier, you can set boundaries. Yes. You can decide who and what comes through. So we were, I think we started at the farmhouse. She had old stories of using it, and like they would be in one room and the light would either flick on or off. And, they were young and they'd scream and they'd go to the other room and use it. And then the light would flick on and off. So I was like, all right, let's see what's going to happen. Nothing like happened to the environment, but we were pushing the planchette around, and I'm trying to remember. I think that he said his name was Gus. I think that he said that he got to the age of like 91, 92. He said he died because he got too old, was what he said. Oh, wow. He confirmed that he was like a train conductor, something like that. He had, I think it was either 2 cats and 1 dog, or 2 dogs and 1 cat. Oh. So like early on, it was like whole life, yeah. So like just interacting, like this is who I was as a human. So from an early age, I'm like, this isn't scary. Like this is just like talking to one of the other farm people, hanging out. Like maybe he was from that area, trains went through that area. Who knows? Maybe it was like a portal station or something. Right. So I think from early on, I was not too scared from some of it. Obviously, if I saw like a big black orb, that might be a little different. But I think from then on, we brought the Ouija board back to our house. It was there for a while. It disappeared. We don't know what happened to it. I was always curious to try it again. But I think another family member, you can't mention that you're into it. I think another family member maybe like borrowed it. So who knows? So that was probably the earliest one that I had. a few years later, my first ever job was a movie theater, and it was definitely a haunted movie theater. So there were a few things that we had go on there. And I know that I think you said that you worked at a haunted location.
Yes.
So it's interesting to have like the shared experience where everyone has different things going on, which just adds to the confirmation of it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I definitely, like, out of the corner of my eye, I would see people, and then you turn and there's no one there. It was in theater 1, there was like a mop bucket closet, and this door wouldn't lock. Like, you just open it, there's cleaning supplies, there's a mop, whatever. And I went in one time and I tried to open it, and it wouldn't open. And it wouldn't budge, and it wouldn't open. And it's like, you can't lock this. Mm-hmm. What's going on? Is it like, my logical brain is like, did the atmosphere change? Is it really humid? Did it get stuck? Things like that. And I tried again, nothing. And then all of a sudden, it's like it shot through me from the closet through, like, kind of in my abdomen, was just like a cold spike go through me. And I was like, what just happened?
Right.
And of course, later on, I learned about like cold spots and things like that.
Yes.
So it, like, that cold thing went through me, and I was like, what just happened? I can't mop anyway. I went to the office area where some people were sitting, and I was explaining what just happened. And that same cold thing, like, started at the bottom of my spine and, like, shot up to the top. And I was like, what is going on?
Wow.
And somebody else went to the mop closet and opened it just fine. So like,
it literally traveled through your chakras. Like
literally
think
up,
about
yeah.
it. Yeah, it started at the base of your spine and just went right. Wow, that's amazing. That's really cool.
So I don't know if there's like an activation there.
Did other people in theater have experiences as well?
All the time.
Oh, okay. Did anyone think they knew what it was or who it was, or?
I don't think they questioned too much in it. It was kind of just known, like, the ghost up in the projection booth, because it would like make tools fly off the walls all the time. Our boss was there. He was my boss when I started, and he was there for a couple of years. He would all the time, he'd be like, I'd go up and tell the ghost what was going on. I'm going to be gone for the weekend. Take care of everyone. So I don't think anyone ever like questioned what it was, but we were all aware of it. Wow. When that boss ended up leaving, he went up to the projection booth and he was like, well, I'm not going to be here anymore. Let it rip. And like the next day, 3 of us went up and were like, please don't. We're still here. Like, we've treated you well, hopefully. So like, maybe don't.
Yeah.
So they all had experiences.
A haunted workplace is definitely interesting because, as you mentioned, you get so many stories and so many shared experiences. And like in my building where I worked, it was a hotel in the 1920s. So there was a murder that occurred there. A prostitute was murdered. And this was considered like a really high class hotel when it was built, Apparently, I don't know if it's true or not, because there was research done about the hotel that was sent to us when we first moved to the building. We were renting it. And I recently looked up some of that, and it didn't seem like it made sense anymore. Like the facts were completely opposite. But anyway, apparently Al Capone stayed there. It was like this big hotel in the 1920s. It was called the Taj Hotel, TAJ, the Taj Hotel. Now, my supervisor's mom actually lived there at one point for like a month or two or something like that. She lived in one of the penthouses. But we had so many experiences, everything from the elevators moving at night by themselves, going up and down, to on the 7th floor, there was an old couple that people would see walking around the office space, and everyone would say, who's that old couple? They're looking for somebody. To cleaning staff seeing people in the cubicles and then going back to say hello to them and they're not there. And then the cleaning staff running to the security guard in tears. I saw them. So many shared experiences. So that is fascinating that you had that as well. Do you have another experience you'd like to share with us?
I do have a couple more, and I had a thought about the hotel. One of the theories with hotels, because so many, if you watch paranormal shows, they talk about all the time, literally there's travelers coming and going through it. Yeah. That's part of the energy that's built into the building.
Yes.
So part of the theory of why they are so active is not only are the spirits traveling through like they would be, there's also so many, like if Al Capone's going to be there, you hear about like the bootlegging, or you hear about people hiding out, you hear about prostitutes. There's so much charged energy when people are hiding out in there, or if that's their known hotel, that starts to charge some of the energy too.
And that that makes total sense, because you're setting up the energy for travel, for transient. So why wouldn't something that's energy based match that energy and also be? That's fascinating. Thank you for bringing that up. I never thought of it that way. That's so cool. What else would you like to share with us?
Sure. I have one smaller one, and then I can go into. I know that I shared on Digital Soulspace the investigation that I did in August. So one other small one that I had. God, I think it was. I don't remember if it was last summer or the summer before. So I also, I am a musician. I've been in musical groups that perform at different places. So old theaters, which obviously also have a lot of potential for some of those things. And I don't remember the name of the theater, but it's off of, I live in Minneapolis, so it's one of the southern suburbs of it. And I was there, and someone who was in the band is like the stage manager at this place. And one time he's like, well, you know that the theater is haunted, whatever. And I was like, okay, between rehearsals, like, we're checking this out. So some of the band members were staying to, like, figure out whatever with the instruments. And he's like, Mariah, we got to come check this out. So there's a museum and a ritual room from an old, what do they call the Freemasons. So there was so there were some Freemasons memorabilia, outfits, hats, whatever, some of the information about them. And then they even took me into what would have been, I think it was called the temple room or the ritual room, something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Beautiful space. Like, you could tell that there was just energy had sunk into it, and it was ready to go. And we were through there, and I was looking at it, a lot of numerology in there. So there'd be 13 steps here and 7 steps here, and here's the geometry that they're putting into the tiles in the floor. And all of a sudden, it was the corner of the room, but it was outside the room. And I kind of asked them, is there something that hangs out over there? And they said, well, I don't know. Maybe, like, outside the room, whatever. And the more I kind of tapped into it, the more I realized, I think that it was a female spirit. And at the time, Freemasons, you had to be male to participate in these, to be allowed in the room, things like that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it was a wife or a sister, something like that. She was connected to the group, but she knew that she was not allowed in the room. And I think she kind of got the feeling of, like, what are you doing in the room?
Yeah.
Like, what are you? Yes. So I think she was curious and, like, she wanted to come in, but didn't. And just a very distinct, like, I felt what she felt like. And she didn't, like, I kind of felt it through the show that night, whatever. Heightened energy, got home, I was sinking into it, whatever. I don't remember if I was on the couch or on the bed, but at that point it was like, I felt that energy again. And I realized, I was like, oh, you followed me home.
Yeah,
I would be like, I visit you at this place, and that's cool, and I'll visit you at that. You can't be here.
So similar to what Kimber said, they can follow you home. I believe that.
Yeah. So that was my first time of, like, okay, here's what it means to, like, lay a boundary. I'm happy to come visit you there. Yeah. And I feel bad that I haven't, but there's a investigation group that I work with that we're going to see if we can, like, convince them to let us go in there. So it'd be fun to return. But that was kind of my first time of, like, let's set boundaries. You're friendly, you're nice. You can't come home with me.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I walk when I walk home from walking the dogs, sometimes I feel like something's following behind me. And I'm open to it, because I know that, okay, if you're sensitive to certain things, and if you're vibrating at a certain frequency, you're going to attract, beings. And maybe someone says, oh, cool, I'd love to hang out with him. So before I enter my place, I go, okay, whoever you are, whatever you are, guess what? Can't come in. Sorry. I also keep selenite above my door, which helps with that. I love that, keeping selenite at windows, or some people can also use salt jars that they feel set up boundaries. Kimber says, I've always heard spaces where change, like renovations, changing spaces, tends to increase the energy of spirits. Very interesting. Kimber also has black tourmaline next to her door. I like that. That's a good idea. That's a wonderful idea. I had an experience where, and I just lost my train of thought. So I'm gonna let you continue.
Sure. I did want to ask, because you had mentioned earlier, like sometimes people look like zombies, but there's definitely spirits out there as well. Do you tend to do the same path when you walk with your dogs?
Yes. Yeah.
I wonder how much, like, we get to know people's habits and we can anticipate things. I wonder if the spirits know he's reacted to me in the past.
Oh.
He's someone who will react. I wonder if they, know that you're coming.
I would totally agree. And if you're into elemental energies, such as if anyone's listening and they're familiar with elemental energies such as the Fae, one of the common, or one of the things I've read online and in certain circles, that you can, if you really want to interact with them, show up to the same place over and over again, introduce yourself to the space over and over again, and eventually you'll start interacting with them or picking up on them. And I was just talking about that this morning to Anne-Marie, that I had a situation where I was visiting my boyfriend's house and acorns kept falling on the hood of my car, and I kept looking and seeing if they were squirrels, and something was moving up there, but I couldn't see, but it was my car constantly. So I thought, I wonder if this is elemental. So Anne-Marie says, set up an offering. So I made this little triangle out of twigs, and I tied it together with this vine kind of material that I found on the ground, and I put it at the base of a tree. And I just shared this morning with Anne-Marie, so it's freaky. It's coming up again. And that night, my car was towed. So I'm like, oh, gee, thanks, And at first, I thought it was like, okay, now they're messing with me, right? Because they're famous for that. The next week, I showed up. So Anthony paid for half my tow. I insisted I pay for the whole thing, but Anthony paid. So it's like $250. So Anthony paid like $125. So the next week, I go to see Anthony again. I park my car, and there's $120 on next to my car. So I felt like that was them saying, look, we're sorry, it wasn't us, but here's what you spent. It was just amazing. So I'm a big believer in showing up to the same place over and over again. In fact, now when I drive to Anthony's condominium complex, there's so many trees and there's a huge lake and everything. I play fairy music on my radio, and I roll the windows down. It doesn't matter if it's hot outside, even if it's raining. I want to let them know I'm there. And I do it sort of as an offering to them as well. So
and they feel like even if they don't know exactly what it means, they know that you're putting intention forth. They know that it's important to you, so then they match that.
Yeah. So let's try to get it. We're running a little bit low on time, so let's try to get another story out of you. And because you just did an investigation recently.
I just did an investigation. So I live in Minnesota. It was further north in Minnesota. I went with a group that they've gone literally international. They've gone up to Canada. They've gone across the ocean. They've gone to so many different places. And it was through a coworker of mine, and I'll be discreet because she likes to be less public with it. But we happened to talk about it at work, and I was like, oh man, I love this. And she's like, well, you got to come with us. And I said, yes, I do. So we went to, it was an old, I think it's just a cultural center now. And there was a woman who came on the investigation that's going to do history of the area to figure out what it was. But they definitely, they've had occurrences happen. They've had other people there that have just picked up on energy. And also the bar next door also had some stuff going on. So they thought there might be some shared energy. And I think the bar manager was one of the people. It was a fundraiser, so they also had these other people join in on it. So we started at the bar, and we kind of invited whatever was there. I guess it had messed with the automatic paper towel dispensers. Okay. So it kept messing with that. So they were like, something's going on. All of us in turn went into the bathroom and we were like, we hear that you're messing with the paper towels. Like, now's the time to do it. I'm ready, whatever. 5 of us went in. Nothing happened. We all came back. We're like, okay, maybe it'll join us over there. Later for the investigation, the bar manager said, literally, I went in there and it went off 5 times. Oh, wow. So it was waiting to communicate with him rather than us. Yeah. But they ended up coming back later. So over the course of the night, probably like 5 or 6 hours. We did kind of 3 different groups. A lot of the typical things. So something that you can set out for them to communicate with is flashlights. And you put it so it's close to going off, but not quite.
Right.
And then you communicate, you just clearly say, because some of these spirits don't know what a flashlight is. They don't know what a spirit box is, some of that. So you just say, if you would like to communicate, you can tap this. Oh man, it was going off when we were still introducing ourselves. There was one set up for yes, one set up for no. They'll just make it go on and off, put both of them on, both of them off. So it was ready to go with that. We had a spirit talker, which a spirit can put the energy into it and it picks up on the vibration to come up with words that are in its word bank. And sometimes it was just saying random things, but it was answering our questions pretty regularly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that was pretty cool. You were mentioning like shadow figures earlier. At one point we were talking about our experiences on it.
Yes.
And I kind of kept seeing up. There was a second floor that had a balcony, and up out of the corner of my eye, I kept seeing a shadowy figure kind of peek out. And then as soon as I would look, it would be gone.
Oh, wow.
And it would
Okay.
kind of peek out and look down, and then it would be gone.
Wow.
So I had some visuals going on, had it communicating through the tools. At one point, it like tugged on my pant leg because I was the one. There's something that's called the Estes method. And so
Okay.
you use a spirit box, which goes through radio frequencies.
Right.
And the spirit can connect with a certain frequency because they're energetic frequency. And it can find the words that it wants to communicate to then make it like a, you take the bias out of it and you confirm it. What happens is someone puts it in headphones, noise canceling, they blindfold themselves so they can't see, they can't hear anyone else. They just say what is said on the spirit box. So everyone else can ask questions and have a discussion. I was the one with the headphones on, so I would hear something and I would say it out loud. And they said that conversation, like there was, Susie came through who had like 13 kids and were like, wow, Susie, you are a powerful woman. Some guy came through, I think his name was John, and he came through in a truck and he was a traveling musician, which at the time I didn't know this was being said, but music kept coming up. So I'd be like, I'm just getting some violins. Then to me it sounded like gibberish, but they were like, oh, he was like a musician. But I think because I was the one that had the headphones on, they kind of knew to get my attention, so that's why they tugged my pant leg. We had down in the basement, the spirits that were at the bar came over, and it was, I don't remember their names, but it was a 15-year-old girl and her younger brother, and they were almost kind of like fighting back and forth. We had an SLS camera that shows like stick figures where there's a human-like figure without there being an
Yes,
actual
you shared some of those pictures.
Well, I was so excited. I love the SLS camera. I was nerding out. One of them, like, standing next to the bar manager, and we think that she was kind of crushing on him a little bit, and then we're like, oh, do you kind of like him? And instantly, no. So it's like, you got the teenage person at one point, she was standing next to him, and this other spirit, like, comes, and it almost looked like it jumped on top of her. And we're like, is there a ghost brawl going on? What's going on? And then we asked it, like, did he attack you? And the spirit talker responded, we're family.
Oh, wow.
Like,
oh, wow.
fight.
That is so cool. I love what you were talking about with using the spirit box with somebody blindfolded with the headphones on, and then you guys having a conversation, and you're not even aware of what they're talking about, but you're just repeating what you hear on the spirit box. I saw that demonstrated in a series called Hellier, which Kimber was a huge fan of, and so was Ian on Digital Soulspace. They love that series. I got really tired of that series in the second season because I was like, okay, when's it gonna happen? And then but I love that happened. There's I just want to say really quick because I want to, there is, if you're interested in ghost hunting for your phone, there's an app I have called Ghost Hunting Toolkit. And I love this app because it has some very basic tools on it. One of them is the yes/no thing. And basically, they just have to tap yes or no, and then it lights up. So they tap that. And the other thing is a push. So it's a push meter. So if they tap and they push long, the meter changes. So again, it's a touch screen So if you don't know how a touch screen works, it's called capacitive touch. So it's actually utilizing the electricity in your body to interact with the screen. So this is perfect for spirits because they're energy based. Another one is a EMF detector. A lot of people don't know that you have an EMF detector in your phone because your compass utilizes it. So, I mean, you can see as you get, closer, if I get to the microphone, maybe, yeah, you can kind of see is it, you get the EMF detectors in there. So it's a really cool little program. There's a lot of fake ghost hunting apps on there. So you kind of have to, the other one, that this is kind of spooky, and I feel like I should plug my audio into it, but I'm not even sure if this is working. This is kind of spooky. This is called necrophonic. And it does try to scare you because of the graphics, but what it does is a sound box of sounds that are pre-recorded, a sound bank, sorry. And let me go ahead and I'm going to turn up the volume here on my phone. I have it plugged into my mixer. Let me see if it comes up. You all can let me know if you hear it. Did you just hear that? Did you all hear that? Where it says,
Yes.
Okay, so necrophonic. So you click start, okay, and it goes through the bank. See, just like that. So you can basically ask questions like, is there anybody here present with us or whatever during our podcast? I just heard sure. I don't know if you heard that.
It kind of sounded like here to me. Yeah. Yeah. Here. Yep.
I heard here again. Anyway, so this is necrophonic. It's scary. They try to scare you. There's the pentagram on there and everything like that. So you can turn echo off and reverb off. You can add white noise. This is a cool app to use. I kind of like it. I had an experience with this app where I just shut it off. Where I was standing in front of a house on my dog walk where I knew the gentleman that lived there. And he used to say hi to me all the time. And he passed away. And I knew he had passed away, even though nobody told me he did until afterwards. But I felt him looking at me outside the window all the time. And so I decided to use this app. And it's the one time where it came through so clear. It was, hello, Mike. And I was like, whoa, okay. And that was the one time that this app actually worked so well. I mean, I've heard, and I have to say, I have to add this podcast to that because I loved when I said, is there anybody here or joining us? I heard here, a bunch of times. So that's very cool. And thank you for sharing, Mariah, your ghost hunting experiences with us.
One tiny thing I wanted to add, because you were mentioning when you listen to it and no one else can hear what's on it, the whatever, that is called the Estes method. Okay. Because it was developed in Estes Park in Colorado. Because I'm sure some of you have heard of this. That's where the Stanley Hotel is. If you've ever seen The Shining, that was inspired by a stay at the Stanley Hotel and some of the energies that were there. I've heard that this entire area is actually built on there's a huge plate of quartz underneath it, which helps amplify so much. So that was actually developed in Estes Park. So for anyone who wants to do research and just the connection of the hotels, all circling around.
Wow. Thank you for that. That is so cool. And Mariah, please continue sharing on Digital Soulspace all your adventures with us. We might have to have a podcast just with you on it.
Sure. And I've been a little busy lately, so I haven't been on the app, but happy to share whenever.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is so cool. Wow, what amazing. I was just like, we're having the coolest stories. And we have just a little bit more time for another. If anybody wants to pop on and share a story. This is totally cool. I can't actually believe that my app here worked with plugging in my You have to get, whenever you're podcasting with an iPhone, you have to get a special rig, and it's called an iRig. It's a special. Anyway, I'm surprised it works because it always doesn't work when I want it to, and I have to mess with it. So while we're waiting, if nobody else wants to step forward, let me tell you my ghost story, and then we'll wrap up because we've already been doing this 90 minutes, believe it or not. My ghost story comes to me. This is probably the most terrifying ghost story I've had, the most terrifying experience I've had with anything like a ghost. And I was about 9 years old actually. I was 9 or 10 years old. And we had just bought a rather large house in an area of town in Miami called Horse Country. And the thing about Horse Country, it's pretty isolated. Like most of the homes are separated by 5 to 10 acres, sometimes 15 acres of land. And there's just, it's no sidewalks. It's, it's like out in the country, so to speak, but it's like a little oasis since it's surrounded by a lot of development. Well, we had just bought a home there, and my parents decided to leave my sister and I there alone, at home, while they went to go get some things. And it was late in the afternoon, so the sun was low in the sky. And we kind of got this, my sister and I were sitting on the couch looking out these big windows that were there, and we started getting this sort of eeriness come over us. And my dog started barking. We had a Cocker Spaniel. And he started barking. And I started seeing a figure in the corner of my eye. And I was just speaking of this actual figure yesterday when I was posting the ancestor group. When I was a young boy, I would see a gentleman in the corner of my eye constantly. Like, not all the time, but a lot. And he was wearing all white. And I would always see him standing there. And I started seeing him in the corner of my eye, standing there very prominently. It was more so than usual. And my dog won't stop barking. And my sister and I are getting absolutely terrified. And it's getting darker because the sun is going lower and lower in the sky. So we're sitting on the couch. The dog is barking like crazy. I keep seeing something in the corner of my eye. My sister and I are so scared because she knows that I can see stuff. And she's asking me, is there anything else here? And I'm like, not right now. And then I go, oh, he just moved to the other side. And I didn't even point because at this point, my sister and I were like holding on to each other because my dog wouldn't stop barking. I go, he just moved to the other side of the room. And my dog turned around and started barking in the direction that I saw this being move to. So it's getting darker and darker in the house. The dog now has been barking for what seems like at least 10 or 15 minutes, just barking into thin air, not going to the windows, not going to the doors, just barking into thin air. Sister and I are holding on to each other. I see then in the dining room, standing behind a chair, what looks to me as a young boy smiling. And he has curly black hair. Looks like he's of Latin descent, and I still can see this in my head. And he was very like faded, but like I could see him practically. But he was a big smile and freaking me out. And just talking about it right now, I have goosebumps. So I'm there with my sister. We are terrified. It's getting darker and darker. The sun has gone down. We are so scared that we cannot turn on the lights in the living room. We literally can't get up. We can't move. We're almost paralyzed by fear. All this stuff is going on. The boy's behind the chair in the living room smiling at me. I see the guy behind me, and the dog won't stop barking. And it is just absolutely terrifying. And all of a sudden, I think it all stopped suddenly. And then my parents came home. And they're like, are you okay? We're hugging them. We're latched onto them. Because not only could I see the things, but we could feel it. And the air was cold. And there was all these sorts of environmental things going on around us. It had to have been, without a doubt, the most terrifying experience I've ever had when it comes to spirit, ever. Now, as an adult, I'm like, where are all these things? Now I'm like, okay, show me. I want to see you now because let's do this, right? Let's have this conversation. And so as a child, I used to see shadow people all the time. In fact, the first shadow person I saw, I thought it was my cousin Eric. And I watched this shadow figure walk around the room, go through drawers, but it wasn't making any noise. Like he would open a drawer, but there was no, like the drawer actually didn't move. And he was walking around. I must have watched him for 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden it was pitch black the room, but I could see him very clearly. And all of a sudden he just dissipated. And I realized, what was I looking at? But I wasn't terrified of that shadow person per se. And there's a lot of debate over what shadow people are, but there are commonalities and you can actually look this up on Wikipedia. Some people see shadow people called the Hat Man. He's wearing a hat, and they see the outline of a hat, and that's a common shadow figure that people see. And there's actually psychological interpretations of shadow people, why people might see shadow people, and is the brain trying to generate stimulus on its own? There's all sorts of different things. Mariah actually says shadow people are so strange to the human mind because it doesn't make any sense and it taps into childhood fears of the dark. I agree. Thank you, Mariah. That's a great explanation of shadow people. And so, yeah, and Mariah, you were actually talking about, and this is what I wanted to say to you that I lost my train of thought. You were talking about that you feel, you can kind of sense or pick up what these beings are thinking or expressing. And I had a similar situation where I was in my brother's condominium up in Central Florida in Winter Haven. And this is an Art Deco condominium that has been around for a long time. And in the lobby, they have this big black and white photo. It's huge of all the Fords, those black Ford cars that remember all the cars used to be one color, black, and parked in front of this building. And with the guy standing in front of the doorman. And it was a very incredible picture. And all of a sudden I felt the need to tell my whole family who was sitting there in the lobby all about this building. And I started spewing about this little old lady who sits down with curly white hair in the lobby. And she knows everything that goes on with the building. And she's actually here with us right now, I was saying to my family. And she knows everyone who's walking in and out of the building. She has been here forever. And I'm going on this, and I'm talking really fast. And whenever I channel or I pull downloads from spirit, I talk really fast. And I started talking all about this to my family, and my brother says to me, "You're describing the lady that used to live in this building that we bought her unit after she died. She was the previous owner of my unit." I was freaking out because it made sense. She has a connection. And then my brother said, what you're saying about her being in the lobby and sitting there and knowing everything that goes on, that's what she would do all day, is sit down. And they used to have stories of her, how she just would sit there and like monitoring the comes and goings when she was alive. And then even more fascinating was when we got upstairs, he pulled out a box of photos she had left behind of her and what appeared to be her partner, her girlfriend. And I felt like she couldn't share in the physical world her love for this woman because of obvious reasons. And then she wanted people to know who she was or what her life was like after she passed away. And I think she intentionally left that box of photos for people to find afterwards. And I just felt so connected with her and afterwards. And I felt she was absolutely overjoyed that I had not only picked up on her, but she got a chance to share her story about her partner. So yeah. Philip says, shadow people were my first intro to the supernatural. I was probably 7 years old or so. Thank you for sharing this story. Oh, thank you, Philip, for sharing that. And yeah, we had some amazing stories today. I want to give a round of applause to everybody and a thunderclap. There we go. And I want to thank everybody for joining us for our real ghost stories. Thank you to everyone who shared their story today. This podcast exceeded my expectations. So thank you, everybody, for showing up. And thank you for joining us. And please visit us at digitalsoulspace.org. We are an independent online metaphysical community. I'm Michael Robert. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful and safe Halloween holiday. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Soul Space podcast. We hope we didn't scare you off, and that you'll visit us again as we explore the unseen together. Don't forget, you can join the conversation anytime by visiting digitalsoulspace.org, an independent online metaphysical community.